All right, so you ready to dive into the world of quantity surveying?
Absolutely. Always excited to shed some light on this field.
It seems like people are really curious about this career path. We got a ton of RoleCatcher resources sent in about it. Guessing our listeners want more than just the surface level stuff.
Yeah, it's not a job that's, how do you say, super well known, but it's definitely essential, especially these days.
Totally. And the RoleCatcher guides really highlight that quantity surveyors are like the financial backbone of any construction project, right? Making sure things get built on budget from start to finish.
That's a good way to put it, though. It's not just about crunching numbers in a vacuum. It's about understanding the whole project life cycle, from the initial blueprints to the final handover.
Right, like they're managing risk, making sure resources are used efficiently, and probably dealing with a whole bunch of unexpected hiccups along the way.
Exactly. I mean, every construction project has its curveballs. A good quantity surveyor can anticipate those, come up with creative solutions, and keep things on track without blowing the budget.
It's got to be pretty rewarding, though, seeing a project through from those early stages to that final ta-da moment, right?
Absolutely. There's a real sense of accomplishment knowing you played a key role in making something tangible, something that will hopefully stand the test of time.
So it's a good mix of the analytical side, that attention to detail with
Yeah.
budgets and contracts, but also a lot of problem solving and thinking on your feet.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a dynamic field for sure. You're constantly learning, adapting, and using both your technical skills and your people skills to get the job done.
And speaking of people skills, I'd imagine communication is key in this role. You're dealing with architects, engineers, contractors, probably a whole bunch of personalities.
It's true. You've got to be comfortable wearing multiple hats. One minute you're deep in spreadsheets, and the next you're on a construction site, explaining technical details to someone who might not speak spreadsheets.
So you're kind of like a translator bridging the gap between the design vision and the financial realities.
That's a great way to put it. And a good quantity surveyor can do that translation while building strong relationships and trust with everyone involved.
That reminds me, the RoleCatcher guide mentions something about how technology is changing the game for quantity surveyors. We're talking drones, BIM software. It sounds like a lot to keep up with.
It definitely keeps things interesting. But these advancements are really revolutionizing the way we work. Take BIM, for example.
BIM software, that was something I was hoping we could dig into a bit.
Sure, so BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. And essentially, it's like having a digital twin of the entire project.
Oh, wow. Okay, so instead of flipping through giant blueprints and making
You've
notes.
got this incredibly detailed 3D model accessible to everyone on the team. You can zoom in on specific components, see how they connect, even simulate different scenarios.
Okay, that's way more high tech than I was picturing. So
Hmm.
how does that actually help a quantity surveyor on a day-to-day basis?
Well, for starters, it makes cost estimations far more accurate and efficient. You can pull up precise quantities for materials, factor in labor costs, even get real-time updates on material prices. It minimizes the guesswork and allows for much more precise budgeting.
So it's about staying on top of costs, but I bet it helps with those unexpected hiccups we talked about too, right?
Absolutely. Let's say there's a sudden shortage of a specific type of lumber. With BIM, we can quickly model alternative materials, see how they impact the budget, and make informed decisions on the fly.
So it's about being proactive instead of reactive, which is huge in a field where time equals money.
Exactly. And beyond the cost savings, BIM also promotes better collaboration and communication between all the different stakeholders. Everyone's working from the same source of truth, which helps prevent costly errors and misunderstandings down the line.
That makes a ton of sense. So we've got BIM revolutionizing the digital side of things, but the RoleCatcher resources also mention drones. What's their role in all of this?
Drones are incredible for site surveying and progress monitoring. Imagine being able to capture high-resolution aerial images of a massive construction site in a fraction of the time it would take to do a ground survey.
That's got to be a game changer, especially for those large-scale projects.
Absolutely. And those images aren't just pretty pictures. They provide valuable data that feeds directly into our cost estimations and risk assessments. For example, we can use drone imagery to track the delivery and storage of materials, monitor progress against the schedule, even identify potential safety hazards before they become major issues.
It's like having an eye in the sky, giving you this comprehensive view of the entire project.
You got it. And all of this data ultimately helps us do our jobs better, ensuring that projects are completed on time, within budget, and to the highest standards.
It's amazing how technology is changing the game, right? But at the end of the day, it's still people who make these projects happen. And speaking of people, let's talk about what a career path actually looks like in this field, because you don't just become a senior quantity surveyor overnight, right?
You got that right. It's a climb, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But a rewarding one. Usually starts with a junior role. Lots of learning the ropes.
So someone fresh out of uni, eager to get their hands dirty, what are they doing day to day?
Well, you're not exactly thrown to the wolves on day one. You'll probably be assisting the more senior surveyors, helping with cost estimations, maybe doing some takeoffs from drawings, could even be some site visits, getting a feel for how things translate from paper to reality.
Okay, so it's a lot of absorbing information, getting that foundation in place. When do you think that transition happens, where a junior surveyor starts to take on more responsibility?
It varies, of course, depends on the company, the individual, all that. But I'd say once you hit that assistant quantity surveyor level, you're starting to manage smaller projects, maybe even parts of bigger ones, more independently. You're trusted to do more research, handle some of the preliminary cost planning.
So more autonomy, higher stakes. That's got to feel good.
It's definitely a step up. You start to see those projects as more than just numbers on a page. You're thinking about the why behind the what.
And that's probably where those problem-solving skills really come in handy. The RoleCatcher guide had a great example, something about a timber supplier going bankrupt right before a project.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading that. I've had my fair share of those moments, too, where something unexpected pops up and suddenly you're scrambling for solutions.
So you've tackled the junior and assistant levels, honed your skills. What's the next rung on the ladder?
That would be the intermediate quantity surveyor. Now you're really starting to see the big picture. Risk management becomes a major focus, making sure the project stays on track, not just financially, but also in terms of time and quality. You might even be mentoring some of those junior surveyors yourself at this point.
So it becomes a bit of a cycle, passing on that knowledge. And the RoleCatcher resources highlighted something interesting about this stage. They mentioned professional certifications, specifically RICS membership. What's the deal with that?
Right, so RICS is the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. It's a globally recognized professional body, kind of the gold standard for quantity surveyors. Getting chartered, becoming an MRICS, it shows you're serious about your career, that you meet their high ethical and professional standards.
That makes sense. Kind of like a stamp of approval that you know your stuff.
Yes.
So you've got the experience, the certifications. What does it take to reach that senior quantity surveyor level? What sets those folks apart?
At that point, you're not just managing projects, you're leading them. We're talking overseeing entire teams, often across multiple projects simultaneously. You're the main point of contact for clients, making sure everyone's on the same page and the project aligns with their vision and, of course, their budget.
Sounds like a lot of responsibility, but also incredible opportunity to make a real impact.
Absolutely. And one thing that always stuck with me from the RoleCatcher guide was an example profile of a senior surveyor who made a point of mentoring up-and-coming professionals. It really highlighted how important that kind of guidance is in this field.
It's true, having someone to show you the ropes, share their experiences, that can make all the difference.
For sure. It's how we all learn and grow, right? Now, beyond senior surveyor, you've got those even more specialized roles like principal quantity surveyor and director of quantity surveying.
What are we talking about there? What sets those roles apart?
Well, think of a principal surveyor as the strategic mastermind. They're often involved in really complex projects, developing company-wide cost management strategies, even acting as expert witnesses in legal disputes.
Wow, so they've seen it all, done it all.
Pretty much. And then you have the director of quantity surveying. They're the ones steering the ship, so to speak, setting the overall vision for the entire quantity surveying department, making sure everyone's working towards the same goals.
So you're talking big picture thinking, shaping the future of the profession, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They're leaders, mentors, and innovators, all rolled into one. It's a demanding path, no doubt, but for those with the drive and ambition, the rewards can be immense. And it's not all about climbing the corporate ladder. One of the things I found really interesting in the RoleCatcher guide was how they emphasized the ethical dilemmas that quantity surveyors often face.
Oh, right. It's not just about the numbers. It's about making sure things are done the right way.
Exactly. We're talking about people's safety, the integrity of buildings, and sometimes those things clash with budget constraints or tight deadlines. It takes real integrity to navigate those situations and make sure everyone's best interests are being served.
It's that human element again. Reminds me of that saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
It's a good reminder that, ethics are a big deal in this field. You're not just building structures, you're building trust. you know? And that made me think of another thing the RoleCatcher guide stressed, this idea of continuous learning. Because this industry is always evolving, right? New materials, new technologies. It seems like you always got to be one step ahead.
It's so true. The learning never really stops in this field,
Yeah.
and honestly, that's part of what makes it exciting.
Totally. So how do you actually stay ahead of the curve? The RoleCatcher guide mentions certifications, industry publications, that sort of thing, but I'm curious what that looks like in your day-to-day.
Well, for me, it's a lot about staying connected, attending industry conferences, subscribing to journals like, construction management and economics, that kind of thing. Even just chatting with colleagues, sharing tips and insights, it all helps.
It's like that saying, iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah, exactly. And those professional certifications we talked about, those are important for keeping your skills sharp too.
The RoleCatcher guide actually listed some common interview questions, and one was all about professional development. Like, what steps are you taking to further your professional development? It seems like employers are looking for that commitment to lifelong learning.
Oh, they definitely are. It shows you're passionate, that you're invested in staying at the top of your game, which, let's be honest, is important in any field, but especially one that's evolving as quickly as this one.
Now, speaking of skills, one thing that really jumped out at me from the RoleCatcher resources was the idea that quantity surveyors could actually work in industries beyond traditional construction. I gotta admit, that surprised me a bit. Can you explain what they meant by that?
Oh, absolutely. You see, the core skills of a quantity surveyor, things like cost management, risk assessment, those negotiation skills we talked about, those are valuable in all sorts of industries.
Okay, yeah, now that you mention it, I can see how those would apply in lots of different settings.
Think about fields like real estate development, for example, or infrastructure projects, even things like renewable energy. They all require people who can manage budgets, analyze risks, and keep projects on track.
So those skills are super transferable. That's pretty cool, actually. Opens up a lot of possibilities.
It really does, and honestly, I think we'll see even more of that in the future.
Yeah.
Quantity surveyors have a unique perspective and a really valuable skill set that can be applied in all sorts of innovative ways.
Well, that's a great note to end on, I think. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. The ins and outs of the role, the skills you need, those career paths, even the ethical dilemmas and the future of the field.
It's been a great conversation. It's always fun to pull back the curtain and show people what this career is really all about.
Absolutely. So, for anyone listening who's intrigued by what they've heard and maybe wants to learn more, I highly recommend checking out those RoleCatcher resources. They're packed with valuable info.
Couldn't agree more.
Hmm.
And hey, you never know, this could be the start of your own journey into the world of quantity surveying.
That's a wrap for us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.